for traveling from near and far to help celebrate my father's legacy. Rick Provine was, after all, a character not soon forgotten. In fact, there's a difficult truth to swallow that both my brother, Reggie, and I have had to accept for most of our lives. Obviously, our father was much cooler than we could ever aspire to be. From half-hearted pleas to please turn down the music on a school night, to watching him welcome or entertain scores of friends at a gig. While proud, we were also always aware of the ripple created by his presence. Upon welcoming someone new into my life, I always find myself eager to describe my dad in terms that accurately depicted his multifaceted character. A feat not easily accomplished. Well, he's a librarian who loves to read, obviously, but he's also a rock and roll / jazz / blues / anything drummer. I mentioned I thought he was actually Ringo Starr when I was a child. Loves to listen to jazz music while watching IU basketball, mere inches from the television with some sort of glasses contraption not otherwise known to man. And oh yes, he was legally blind and unable to see any color whatsoever. And yes, he was also an impeccable dresser with a coat collection you simply wouldn't believe. Truly. You just have to meet him. I love him, trust me. At the end of the day, Rick Provine was a man who was comfortable in his own skin. You couldn't accuse him of having been handed a silver spoon or life of comfort. He was self-made and hardworking. He knew how to create his own joy and learn to revel in it without a moment of second guessing. Starting at 14, he began playing drums for various bands and bars, legal or not. And despite being convinced stardom was around the corner, I will point out the picture furthest from me that a 17-year-old dad preparing to become a rock star. He eventually relented and enrolled at IU after graduating from Terre, Haute, South. He quickly proved that he was too cool for school by swiftly getting kicked off campus. I will spare you the story. You're welcome, Dad. He took a brief hiatus from his education, moving to Kentucky, where he met my mother, Cheryl, while managing a noble Roman's pizza restaurant. Affectionately calling her the spatula, he eventually convinced her to date her boss. What follows is a lot of yada yada that you might expect from a child describing the love life of their parents. Nevertheless, they eventually married and returned to Bloomington, where my dad worked nights as a janitor while earning his bachelor's and eventually his master's in library science. If you're wondering when he slept, he didn't. Unlike people who may have seen a career in libraries as uncool, my dad knew better. Instead, he chose to pioneer a new subspecies of librarian focused on music and movie collections. He started his career at the University of Virginia, a time which is best described by his former colleague and dear friend, Judy Thomas, and I'll read her words. Rick had a profound impact on the University of Virginia Library, and we continue to benefit from his contributions to this day. A visionary and an inventor, he recognized in the early 1990s the potential of digital media for research, scholarship, and teaching. He established the Digital Music and Media Center, one of UVA's first digital centers, and later led the development of our media services to their full expression with the 1999 opening of the Robertson Media Center, which featured a large circulating media collection alongside an array of digital media services, and served as a national model for media centers at that time. But what Rick's colleagues remember most goes beyond his vision. He was kind and generous, always ready to share his time, knowledge, and encouragement. Many of us were lucky enough to call him a mentor, a teacher, and a friend. And we will always recall his remarkable musical versatility. Hardly a week went by without Rick behind a drum kit playing jazz, blues, rock, country. He could do it all. As Judy so adeptly points out, my father was a man capable of balancing his work, his passions, and his emotions with grace. To know him was to know he never shied away from responsibility. If you needed a committee chair, a president, or a friend, He was ready and willing. He was both a dedicated professional and a late-night rock star, a doting father and husband, as well as a loyal friend and supporter. He could diffuse a tense situation while simultaneously convincing you that his idea was really yours. Regardless of the fullness of his calendar, he always arrived prepared, present, and most importantly, prompt. I can hardly think of a time he didn't arrive 15 to 30 minutes earlier than the time upon which we had agreed to meet. He was kind, endlessly understanding, and accepting. Though it need not be said, I want to be clear, I am supremely proud to say that he was my dad. After we landed in Greencastle, he quickly set out to find his place in the community. He joined bands and played for various musical productions while making his way through nearly every corner of the DePaul libraries. Thanks in large part to his social nature, our family had the support we needed to survive the passing of our mother so soon after we arrived. He worked hard to ensure that the bond between himself and his children was strong, stronger than ever. And so, Dad was henceforth known simply as Dude. When we later welcomed Anne into our family, Reggie and I knew we could trust him, though that didn't mean we didn't occasionally put her through her paces, much to Dad's chagrin. Anne will happily tell you horror stories, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, there was nothing we wouldn't have done to make sure he was happy. Throughout his life, our dad worked hard to create a world in which he wanted to live. He championed art and free speech and served on the political campaigns of friends whom he believed would make the world just a little bit better. For the most part, I believe he succeeded in his mission. We've joked that Greencastle felt designed for him, a walkable college town with a thriving and impressive music scene that also happens to be home to a church with the best band you've ever heard, who had no issue welcoming a lifelong atheist as their drummer. No matter where he went, he always found good people, good music, and good food. If only we could all be so lucky.
Hello. So, to play off of what Vanna was saying, I, unlike my father, have come neither prepared nor prompt. And would like to first, as you do in these things, give thanks to all of you for turning up, and give thanks directly to the band, to the Moores, to everyone who contributed in making this absolutely confusing week happen. I never thought that I would be giving this speech, and for a week I've been telling my sister I was going to give this speech, and I have some ideas, so let's see how they go. The first one I would like to get on is talking about pieces of media that Dad loved, because I think the best portrait of him in my life is explained by the things he actually enjoyed listening to, the things by which he'd find himself, and the quotes that made it possible for us to communicate with one another. Anyone who knew him knew that me and him mainly spoke to one another in quotes from Vickie Provine. And this is the origin of the dude, for he's the dude. She is also the dude. I'm sorry to bring up the less than Jake, but anyway, I used to spend many long nights up drinking with him, and watching the Big Lebowski, drinking White Russian, clearly of age, and going through what we went through in our childhood and throughout my life being a lunatic. He was always there to make sure that I had a rational, decent perspective, and always tried to keep me on the side of being kind, as the man taught us. I remember when I was about 8 years old, maybe 9, I'd recently watched Pulp Fiction. At his behest, he said I was ready. I still have a fear of hypodermic. And he handed me a copy of Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions. And I read that book, and he said it was his favorite book, and he said it was a book that meant a lot to him, the one that helped define so much of how he tried to approach the world with kindness and understanding and a recognition of the just sheer absurdity of being. The Douglas Adams passage I read earlier is much on the same theme. This is not a world that ever is going to make sense to anybody, but we're all trying our best, and we all have to do it together. And that is a lesson he made sure I learned. And so he, while locked in the Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Library in the window, eating oysters, as you do, he got himself a prison tattoo of Kurt Vonnegut's signature, which those very astute of you may realize is an asshole, on his forearm. And I, in solidarity, got the etc. from Breakfast of Champions, as there are many fine illustrations in them, not many of which I would want on my body. And so, Wednesday, on that same forearm, I recreated that tattoo. So, we still have our prison tats together. And beyond that, I'm really not sure I have much to say, so I'll hit you with some brevity and what qualifies for an amen. So it goes.
Reggie and Savannah. Rick would have loved this celebration. Like, this is the best. I can't believe that you put such a fabulous thing together in the midst of all your grief, and all the musicians. Thank you. When Rick moved to Greencastle with Reggie and Savannah and Cheryl 25 years ago, he faced daunting challenges. Reggie and Savannah were still young, Cheryl severely handicapped, Rick's eyesight too limited to drive, and Rick was starting a new job. Yet he managed it all with grace and humor. It was our family's great good fortune that Reggie and our older son Aiden quickly bonded over their shared love of computers and board games and their complete disdain for school. Rick was fiercely devoted to his family. As we had the joy of learning over the years, he was also fiercely devoted to his friends and his friends' children and his children's friends. Rick and Ann's home became the #1 refuge for Aiden, our younger son Kim, and a whole host of other teenage boys during that time. They would play Risk, a board game of quote-unquote diplomacy, conflict, and conquest all night, before crashing wherever they found a couch or a bed in the Provine's fabulous house. Rick loosely provided over these weekends in his noblesse oblige fashion, while he and Anne kept the boys well fed. Now, the principal beneficiary of the latter was our son Kim. Bruce and I are vegetarians and raised our children on a mostly plain vegetarian diet. Kim, however, shared Rick's love of good food. He was born to be a carnivore. As Kim recalled just a few days ago, Rick was always feeding me bacon and red meat as his, quote, civic duty to a fellow food enthusiast, end quote. Meanwhile, Rick often thanked Aiden for his largely successful efforts over the years in keeping his best mate, Reggie, from being expelled from Greencastle High School. After our boys had all left Greencastle, Anne and Rick remained close friends of ours. Given the Provine's house location, Bruce on his bike, of course, and Rick, walking, of course, would see each other quite a bit on the East Washington Street sidewalk as they both made their way to and from the DePaul campus. Bruce delighted in those exchanges with Rick's thoroughly enjoyable sense of humor. For most of the 2010s, Rick and I mostly bonded over issues such as free and open access to scholarly articles. He was particularly supportive of Bruce and me during the prosecution and death of Aaron Swartz, a beloved member of our family who was a leader of the worldwide open access movement. Through this, Rick became interested in our contrasting approaches to such problems, rooted as we both came to understand in vastly different childhoods and the attitudes of our parents. In 2014, he made the absurd suggestion that he write a book about my life. We bantered about this for many years until suddenly during the pandemic, he told me that he'd applied for sabbatical leave with his primary project being an oral history with me. By then, I liked the idea. I was already well into my 70s, and as I wrote to Rick at the time, I seemed to be losing my memories faster than I'm making them. But most important, the project meant spending many hours with Rick, including a delightful few days aboard my sailboat where I lived in San Francisco. My favorite memories of Rick are of those days. I wish all of you could have had the experience of Rick gently guiding you through your entire life, of asking thoughtful, challenging questions. And I wish, in retrospect, that I had been doing his oral history, not the other way around. Who would have thought that I would be the one eulogizing him rather than him eulogizing me? Rick was as kind and decent a person as I've known. It's beyond words how much his delightful good humor, keen intellect, kindness, and devotion to family, friends, and professors will be missed.
invite Steve Tim to offer a tribute, and at that point, or after that point, we will ask anyone in the room that would like to share a tribute or memory to do so at that time. So I'll invite Steve to come forward.
When I was a playwriting student at IU, my mentor said that if we were lucky, we would have 4 or 5 people in our lives whose opinions mattered to us, who would hold us to account for our writing, and who would call us out if we had not put our best effort forward. And he said when we wrote, we would have this sort of private audience in our heads during that creative act. And we would know that our work would be judged by standards that we mutually agreed to. When I met Rick Provine for the first time, I decided there wasn't any way I was going to let him into that group. And yet, somehow he found his way in. 10 years ago, along with my creative partner, Kyle Hamm, I wrote and produced a movie that did well on the film festival circuit, and during its national release made $23 million. I'm sorry, $2,300. After the Greencastle premiere, Rick sent me a congratulatory note saying, "Way to go, you made a real movie." We followed it up a couple days later with a critique, and I've had lots of critiques over the years, but none with more insight, more finger on the pulse of the culture than what Rick provided. And here's what he wrote in an email. As I said before, great film, but like all films, it could have been better. Here are my notes after the first viewing. 1, where are the fucking clowns? Putnam County didn't become the clown capital just because of all the dipshits, more clowns. Number 2, Lucy is hot, but couldn't she have had a hot friend? Maybe she was really sweaty and had to take a shower. Maybe Lucy turned to her for comfort. You know, something to break up the tension. 3, product placement. Some missed opportunities here, I can tell you. To bought t-shirts, maybe an all-girl softball game with Dixie Chopper as the sponsor. Maybe someone loses a leg during the big climactic mowing scene. Music. The music was good, but I was itching for some balls out rock and roll. It's fucking Putnam County. I bet Styx isn't very busy right now. Chief, too. And number 5, dancers. A go-to destination for Putnam County residents is dancers out on Highway 40 in Plainfield. Great food and atmosphere. Maybe Lucy and her hot friend get a part-time job. Nice for Charlotte. I should say one night while Rick and I were bowling with the Monday Night Stompers, I'll happy to explain where that name came from to anybody at the risk later. But we were bowling and we agreed that whoever died second, and this is true, had carte blanche to publicly expose the other friend's emails. Here's an example. In 2016, I sent out an email to a few friends trying to find some paddling partners for a trip. The subject of the email was this: wanted, deliverance reenactors. So I'm thinking about paddling the Buffalo River in early June, prior to berry season, and hopefully before it gets too hot. And I go and explain it's 135 miles, no dams, a few rapids, campsites. And I said the eastern section is navigable all year, so maybe 70 or 80 miles would be a good target for the week. I would, of course, be Lewis, originally played by Burt Reynolds, and the rest of you can fight over who gets to play Bobby, the Ned Beatty character. Toothless Mountain Man, Drew, Ed, Banjo Boy, and James Dickey Sheriff are all for grabs. On the second day, I'll pretend to have a compound fracture on my leg, and at every occasion, like say breakfast, I'll grab you by the collar and whisper through clenched teeth, "Now the game begins." While you bring me food, tourniquets, and beer. We'll have to kill a couple people along the way, but it's Arkansas and the National Scenic River, so that shouldn't be a problem. Let me know if you're remotely interested. This is Rick's reply. This sounds like a lovely gathering, but I have a different film in mind. Perhaps the Wild Bunch might be a more fun and appropriate. We can ride into a small town bank, shoot up the place, and then perhaps find a nice 5-star hotel to spend the remainder of the week and the fruits of our heist. We can fill the canoes with ice, beer, and bottles of oaky Chardonnay for late afternoons by the pool. You can be Pike, Peckinpah's anti-hero and ringleader of the group. You shoot first and we'll all follow your lead. Much like Deliverance, the Wild Bunch is about anachronisms. So we will have to leave behind technology, modern clothing, and respect for human life. It could get ugly, but it could also cement your fame for posterity. Imagine the ticket sales for reparation after a bloody siege at the Ritz-Carlton. All that said, I sadly cannot attend your gathering regardless of the film or theme, but I'm more than willing to help write the script ahead of time. Have fun, boys. Rick. Rick told me many times that his idea of camping was to open the window at the Holiday Inn. I have a couple more. One of the things that Rick and I did was try to keep each other in check when the other person's head got too big. And he sent out a really detailed email to the faculty on December 16th one year about this Haute Trust Digital Library, the process that it took to log into it, which I thought was too complicated. So my response was this: really? How the hell are we supposed to remember all this shit? And is there a catch award for the first faculty member to read the millions of digitized volumes? Nobody likes you when you pull this shit at the end of the semester. In fact, nobody likes you no matter what you do. A few minutes later, I received this response. Dear Dr. Tim, of course you are right. How silly of me to expect faculty members to understand simple instructions. I'll create a video utilizing Legos and animation that resonates more with your simplistic orientation. Thanks for pointing out my egregious error in overestimating your capabilities. It was a tough semester, especially for the faculty, having to choose whether to teach online or actually work. Really difficult given your limited ability to react to change and absorb new information. My face is certainly red. Please accept my sincerest apologies, asshole. Finally, one year I sent him an invitation to Thanksgiving. And I said, we're doing a Thanksgiving dinner. Barbara's friend, her son, his girlfriend, or wife, I don't know, maybe Worthington, maybe some folks from Ohio, although I'm not thrilled about them showing up. But you're invited, I guess. Bring who you want. If it works out, if not, whatever. Here's Rick's response. Dear Stephen, I am touched by your warmth. Thank you for inviting us to share in this most familial of holidays. Just as the pilgrims slaughtered their way into our hearts and minds, so too have you. Sadly, we must decline. Anne washes her hair, eats Thanksgiving, and I, of course, will be forcing heated objects into my rectum until I feel truly thankful. Warm regards, the pilgrims. I have scores of these. And here's what I think they are. I think they're two middle-aged, portly guys that loved each other. I'm gonna miss him.
This is often the time I would give a sermon. But as I look at the time, I think we'll just move forward. Lord knows Rick endured many a sermon in this place. And though in a few moments I do want to share some other remarks. I want to offer just my own gratitude for his life and presence here in this place, as Savannah already mentioned. Just part of what makes Gobin so weird, is Rick Provine. And I would love to just read everyone's correspondence with Rick, but not only was he an honorary Methodist and atheist, which I think work in this place, but I was known to take Rick out in the Methodist world, where he would be an honorary Methodist in so many ways. And so I just want to offer an example of an invitation where I texted, "Hey Rick, want to join me in Fort Wayne on Friday for a thing?" "Sure, what are the logistics?" His follow-up, what will the dressing rooms be like? Does the rider include grape Kool-Aid? I responded, "It's for the Quadrennial Jurisdictional Conference." And he responded, "Sweet." I said, "Yes, it's a good thing you've got an annual conference performance also on your resume." Yes, it is. Honorary Methodist. And not only was he an honorary Methodist, but I think he is technically an honorary Methodist clergy person, because one of those events was clergy session at annual conference, where Rick, of course, was along for the ride to play, and someone realized he was not a clergy person, and as you all know, clergy session is limited to only Methodist clergy, a very secretive kind of group. So we had to take an actual vote whether or not to allow Rick Provine to play drums for clergy session. He was unanimously approved, and I think that means he's a Methodist pastor. Now, it is my understanding that we will have much of the rest of the day to continue to share stories, testimony, all of this, but at this time, if there are any in the room who would like to share, the family offers that invitation at this time. I would say with this crowd, you can stand where you are, unless you'd like to walk up here, and you're welcome to do that as well. So we're going to allow a few moments.
Hi, I'm Debbie. I have the privilege of being Rick's next door neighbor from the time I was about 4 years old. This is my husband. Okay. Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm Rick's, was his next door neighbor from the time I was about 11 or 12 years old. First met him as the stranger in the neighborhood on a really cool bike. I can't speak from the academic world or the, funny stuff that Rick did, although I was privileged to a lot of that. But I'd like to share my last conversation with him. It was about a week before he decided to leave us all here. And he said to me, "Who would have ever thought we would see our grandchildren go to school together, Quinn and Rory?" And I said, "I know, we shouldn't be this old." And he said, "Ugh." And now I say, "Ugh, Rick, because you've left us all here to journey this world without you, and we're going to miss you a whole bunch."
Now we've made it a thing with the roving microphone. Or speak real loud.
I'm Veronica, and I'll be brief. And you know that when somebody hands a microphone to a politician and they say they'll be brief, I'll be brief. The first day I arrived in Greencastle was also the first day that I met Rick, you see, because Rick was on my hiring committee for my first role at DePaul. And he would often regale people over the 19 years that we worked together, both at DePaul and as musicians, that when he saw me in that interview and I mentioned that I played jazz piano, that for him, that sealed the deal. He would tell me this story over and over again over the last 19 years. There are a few things that Rick would often say to me at the end of gigs. Almost always he would tell me that he loved me and how much he loved playing with me. Rick would often tell me that I was his best friend. And Rick was my best friend. Rick was there when I was at my lowest and when I've been at my highest in this community. When my dear housemate passed away in 2007 and we celebrated her life in this very place, Rick was there to catch me. And when I made a ripple and got elected to office in 2019, Rick was there that night to pop the cork with us at Bridges. Rick, as a drummer, is a wonderful, wonderful person to work with, but you need to know something about Rick as a musician. He's a drummer who really despised drum solos. You see, that's the kind of person that Rick was, because he didn't want to shine in the moment. He wanted to help other people get lifted up and shine in their own place. And for me, Rick is a light that helps this community shine so much more, even today and even tomorrow. So, thank you, Rick, and may his light continue to shine for all of us and for Greencastle.
My name is Jeff. From 13 on, we hung out together. I consider myself his best friend, but I think he had a lot of best friends. We had one rule: we didn't talk about girls ever. Never ever would we talk about girls. And I'm going to know, when did he become a good food connoisseur? Because I remember him burning my throat out with those tamales in a jar, or pizza, or whatever we could come up with out of the fridge. He was not a cuisine kind of back then. So something must have happened on the way to college. He was a hell of a drummer and a good friend. He was very kind, and he worked through high school making lots and lots of friends and different kinds of people. Our high school had people from 3 different areas, and they all were different. He managed to be friends with everybody. He has a wonderful family. I see him in both of you. Truly do. You have his sense of humor, and that's scary. I loved him like a brother. He's still my brother. He always will be my brother. He is here now. He's here now. The band, the musicians, that was top notch. I have been with his roadie. He actually got me in to see him one time at a bar. I didn't have an ID, and I was not old enough, and I had longer hair then. The ID he got for me was one of his lead singer friends who was 6'5" or 6'6" and looked like a very tall Charlie Manson. And I'll be darned if they didn't let me in. So he embraced all kinds of music, and I think music is a language of love and of gathering everyone together, and that was all Rick. So thank you all for sharing his other best friends, every one of you, because he was a great guy, and I will miss him dearly. I spoke to him just a week or so ago, and he was so excited. He got surgery on his eyes and he could see really well. We went through that whole thing. I actually used to help him go to the store and pick out his clothes in high school because he couldn't see colors. And he was just over the top excited about being able to see for the first time because I knew he loved to read, and he was much more academic than I was about reading. Just a great guy. So here's to Rick. Here's to Rick. Thank you.
What a great last joke that Rick has me like this. I met Rick and Ann on June 13th, 2016, and for reasons I wish I knew, I have to tell you all that 61316 is a palindrome. My wife Sylvia had just finished grad school and was starting her job at DePaul working under Rick as a music and performing arts librarian. Because she had so much going on at this point, I was tasked with finding a place to live in Greencastle, and it was not going well. So finding a rental is stressful under normal circumstances, but we lived 4.5 hours away in Milwaukee, and I was told several times by landlords that they wouldn't or couldn't send any pictures and we'd have to see them in person. So we, as a last-ditch effort, came down. I'm gonna skip a lot of the details, but suffice to say, after much time, negotiation, angst, and paying for several weeks of rent before we would move, we secured a place to live. And now with the 4.5 hour drive back, she tells me that her new boss wants to get dinner. And I was not excited about that, but I'm so glad that we did it. At that dinner, Rick and I bonded over our shared love of music, the drums, and the drummer Dave King. He was so proud to tell me about his Craviato jazzette set, and I told him how much I coveted the Craviato time his timbers. This is so silly. And these are drums that were carved from logs that fell down and sunk into Lake Michigan and then were brought up 600 years ago. We had similar taste in that. He also told me that he thought I looked like the drummer Stanton Moore, which I took it both as a compliment and as an early indication of how his eyesight was. So at that dinner, Rick and Ann made me feel as though I could actually go through with moving here. And that they've been amazing, caring, and supportive for the 9 years since. It is so clear to everyone that knew him that he loved and cared for his family and friends so deeply. And he was quietly proud of his children and grandson, Quinn. He could also be extremely patient. In May, Rick and Ann drove Sylvia, our little boy Rory, and I to the airport at an ungodly early hour. And when Rory started to get fussy, Sylvia and I knew that the only guaranteed way to stop it was to put on the song Lady Fingers by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. On repeat. So he sat through about a half an hour and didn't complain, at least while we were in the car. But we loved talking about music and gear. We went to many, many shows, including seeing Dave King play a few times at the Bad Plus. We talked about the different lineups that the Bad Plus had and which were our favorite. And Anne, I have a second-hand Reed Anderson story that I need to tell you later. And I wish I could have told Rick too. The last time we texted, Rick said he wanted to add hi-hats to his Govan kit and wanted to know if I had any extra sets he could try out. And if anyone has ever been to my house, they know that the answer is yes, of course I do. And so a few times a year, like after a rough gig or a crazy couple weeks, I sometimes ask myself why I still take nearly every opportunity to play music. And I'm reminded that playing music with and for people is when I feel most connected with others and when I feel like I'm at my best and most present self. So it's provided me so many cherished and enduring friendships. I can't imagine not doing it. And though we never explicitly talked about it, I'm confident that it was the exact same way for Rick, and that's how it happened.
Brooke Cox, come on down.
Thank you, Brian. I am Brooke Cox, current Dean of Libraries. I've known Rick my entire career. I like to tell people he raised me from a pup, which I hated. He entirely did do that, and I am so grateful to him. All the ways he taught me, just the things that were digital, the complicated directions we'd send out to campus, and the patience. That's what I learned more than anything. We don't build bombs in libraries, thank God. But that constant reminder that things can wait, people are the most important. I'll be forever grateful to him for that. I would like to take the opportunity to invite you, if you've not been over to Royal West Library, just across campus here, that is Rick's building. That was his baby for years and years. We've fought through leaks and holes and rodents, a whole host of things, but Rick never gave up. He kept fighting the good fight to get the funding we know we needed, we knew we needed. And every inch of that space is there because he made it happen. So please come over if you haven't had a chance, wander through. It's a beautiful space that was the old and the new, acknowledging that the physical print is still so important, but also technology is here to stay and will continue to shape the way we interact with knowledge. So thank you for this wonderful service. Rick was 1,000 times cooler than I will ever be, and I'm just so grateful for him. Thank you.
As we reminisce, I was imagining Ted Danson calling Rick into his office to tell him he's in the good place. Rick was the best, definitely one of the good guys. I will miss his brain, his wit, his compassion, his commitment to DePaul and to all of us. I confess I had a secret personal fantasy about Rick. And that was one day to work for Rick. I thought he would be the coolest boss on campus. Not just anybody who can pull off a pork pie hat like that. With a degree in dramatic history and criticism with an emphasis in opera, not library science, that didn't happen. So one day after Rick had retired, I received a letter from him in petition of his interest in joining the board of the Greencastle Arts Council. And I was thrilled. I would at last have a chance to work with Rick. And in the course, that did indeed happen. And we all had the pleasure of working with him this past year on the Arts Council. So as I don't have as colorful of stories to share with you as Steve and his family and Rick's family, I did want to share with you that a project he was working on for us was commissioning an evening of featuring the music of Hoagie Carmichael for the Sandy Williams Trio to be performed at our annual Bon Soiree on November 1st. And so we have that to look forward to. Rick will be greatly missed as a friend and model to us all. I kind of doubt he's resting in peace. I imagine he's rocking heaven right now.
I'd just like to thank all of you for coming and sharing all of your beautiful words and not being too serious about this, because I think it's wrong. But after this, we've got an after thing at the Whisk going on, and go down there. I believe first drinks on us. They've got a menu, no great shakes, but we're going to at least treat you a little bit. And then around 8:30, I believe, after their normal dinner services pass, we're going to have a bit of an open mic. So any of you who are musicians, remembered your instruments or are just bored, feel free to join us for that for the rest of the evening. Anyway, thank you all very much.
That may have sounded like a closer, but we're only about a quarter of the way through. As I said, this is not your only opportunity, our only opportunity to tell these stories and to share these memories. We'll do so the rest of the day and into the days and weeks and years to come, of course. We are not a quarter of the way through. This is, in fact, the home stretch. But I did want to offer a tribute. Of course, it makes no sense at all that I would get a last word. How foolish to think I could somehow sum things up. Grief is not a competition, and we tend to make everything a competition, and so on. As far as it goes, I have been sleeping okay and eating well. I'm sad when I think of Rick and the unfairness of it all, and so it goes. I had even more time to think these last 2 days as I drove to St. Cloud, Minnesota and back. St. Cloud earned its nickname, the Granite City, due to its booming granite quarry industry since 1880s. Locally quarried granite, especially in red and speckled varieties, have been used in buildings and monuments across the U.S., and here I have drawn a speckled variety of granite. St. Cloud is also home to the Central Minnesota Orthodontics. They do good work there. It's also noteworthy that my brother-in-law offers a significant family discount. Orthodontia is expensive after all, and we machines are programmed to desire straighter teeth than we've been given. I thought about Rick on my drive. I wondered how I might honor Rick. An idea popped in my head, as ideas often do. I would listen to Kurt Vonnegut. Not because Rick and I shared a love for Vonnegut, but because he loved Vonnegut and I wanted to. I couldn't remember reading any Vonnegut, not even Slaughterhouse-Five, so that's where I started. 20 hours of driving allows one to listen to both Slaughterhouse-Five on the way there and Breakfast of Champions on the way back. I understand that Vonnegut has written much more, but if these two works are representative of Vonnegut's writing and style, then I'm a fan, and I'm only just beginning. Slaughterhouse-Five on Audible is read by James Franco. James Franco is an Oscar-nominated actor, filmmaker, and professor. At one point, he was enrolled in so many graduate programs simultaneously that universities were sure he had cloned himself. He taught classes, took classes, and occasionally fell asleep in classes. He's also famous for being everywhere at once. This is not unlike the way Vonnegut's Tralfamadorians experience time. They perceive every moment, past, present, and future at once, like seeing a whole landscape instead of walking a single path. For them, time is not linear, but always fixed and complete, so everything that has happened is happening and will always happen. For them, death is an illusion. Because every person always exists in all moments of their life, no one is ever truly gone. A dead person is simply in a bad condition at that particular moment, but in other moments they are all alive and well. That's why the Tralfamadorians respond to death with the famous phrase, "So it goes." It expresses acceptance, not despair, because life and death are just different parts of the eternal whole. It may surprise you to know that this is the most I've ever discussed an alien people in the context of a funeral tribute. You may also experience some discomfort and perhaps think I've lost the focus, that it's moved from Rick to an author he appreciated. Popular culture, and especially popular Christianity, often mistake the funeral as being for those left behind. He's not here, they say. The deceased is gone, they say. We'll tell that to the 5th century Christians, or the Tralfamadorians for that matter. He is here, and we accompany him in this next chapter with music and tribute and so on. A prayer from my tradition goes like this: for all that name has given us to make us what we are, only you'd never say name unless someone's name was in fact a name. It could be Kilgore Trout or Elliot Rosewater and so on. Today, though, I pray it this way for all of us. For all that Rick has given us to make us what we are, for that of him which lives and grows in each of us, and for his life that will never end, we give thanks. Thank you for the recommendation, Rick, and for the life well lived, and for all the music and all the time and the generosity and the laughter and so on, etc. And now, friends, I invite you to pause in silence for just a moment as the band comes back forward, as we all honor Rick's presence in the world, his contributions to our lives, all his loved ones, and the collective whole. We hold space with gratitude for the positive ripple effects of his life beyond the reach of our knowledge. Love weaves our lives together in ways we cannot fully comprehend. And so, in silence, let us honor the breadth and the depth of Rick's life's reach, the known and the unknown.
There'll come a day where there's no more crying, and there'll come a time when the war will cease. There'll come a day, so just keep on believing. Hold on to hope, hold on to faith, or hold on to me. If you got a little joy, keep smiling. If you got a little light, keep shining. Just a little human kindness might be all it takes. If you got a little grudge, forgive it. Step into your little life and live it. We've all got a little love to give. Let's give it all away. Play it, Veronica. little joy, keep smiling. If you've got a little light, keep shining. Just a little human kindness, it might be all it takes. If you've got a little grudge, forgive it. Step into your little life and live it. We've all got a little love to give. Let's give it all away. Let's give it all away. Oh, and all will be well, will be well, will be well in the end. All will be well, will be well, will be well in the end. I'd like to invite you to sing that with me. All will be well, will be well, will be well in the end. I can hear the choir sing. All will be well, will be well, will be well in the end. All will be well, will be well, will be well in the end. All will be well, will be well, will be well in the end.
Is that his time? It's time? Okay. It's time, and in honor of the ways Rick so graciously endured prayers and sermons and general God stuff, one prayer. God of love, God of peace, come and comfort all who are grieving. Weep with those in sorrow. Gather round in circles of remembrance. Hear all of the gratitude. And make holy all that pours from broken hearts. May your eternal embrace, your forever love, your divine presence that is before death and companions through death and rises after death be the resting place, the place of return where we can always find each other, and so on, etc.
We picked this song for our last gig together. When the day is done
You've already heard the benediction. Now we move this party to the whisk. And I'll tell the story about the time Rick said I was his best friend. Go in